If you would like to earn CPE credit for listening to the show, visit earmarkcpe.com/FPA. Download the app, take a short quiz, and get your CPE certificate. Finally, if you enjoy listening to FP&A today, please go to your podcast platform of choice, click the subscribe button, and leave a rating and review of the show. And now, on to the show.
From data rails, this is FP&A Today.
Welcome to FP&A Today. I'm your host, Glenn Hopper, and today we're joined by Daniel Paik, the founder and CEO of CuroWork. Daniel has over 20 years of experience in corporate finance, including his time as CFO at Invent Corporation and as Director of Finance at CCI. With a strong background in establishing international offices, leading ERP implementations, and shaping corporate financial strategies, Daniel is a visionary leader in the back office operations space. Today, we'll dive into some of the most pressing challenges back office teams face and the role of management, and why eliminating micromanagement might be more complex than it seems. Let's get started. Daniel, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Glenn.
I've got a list of questions, but as I was going through the intro, leading ERP implementations, I just want to touch on that for a minute because I don't know how many of these I've done in my career. And on the other side of them, how great they are. But is there anything more painful that you've done in your career than leading an ERP implementation?
Yes, ERP implementation globally. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
multiple subsidiaries, multiple countries. Yeah, it's probably one of the hardest things to do and the most time consuming. I'll tell you, the first time I've ever done one, I was thrown into the lion's den. We were small, probably about 100 people. We probably shouldn't have done what we did, but it was right after the 2008, the subprime mortgage, bust, I guess. And so we were looking to implement an ERP, finance, accounting, kind of sales, forecasting system in a very 100-person team. That was we were global. We're in 38 countries, a few here, a few in Poland, few in South America, etc. And they put it on me. They said, "Hey, you're our head of finance. So you need to do this." So I said, "I've never done this before. We'll figure it out." So I figured it out. I literally spoke to 60 vendors. It took 6 months. The first time doing it, I just go too much on diligence. That was one of the feedback that I received after doing this. But it was a lot for my learning. But the thing was, because 2008 and it was around 2010 when we purchased it, everybody was giving deals. And so I went from tier 3s to tier 2s to tier 1s, and I ended up with the Oracles, SAP, Microsoft Dynamics AV, and things that were just way above what we needed, but they were giving such amazing deals that we decided to go with Oracle EBS, E-Business Suite R11. I don't know if people know about that, but it's usually done with teams of people, implementations. For the first year, I was the only one doing it. And I literally went to my CEO and I said, "Hey, Glenn, I'm working 14 to 16 hours a day, 7 days a week. I need help." And he's like, "What's going on?" So I explained to him. He's like, and they wouldn't give me help because they couldn't understand it because they'd never done it themselves. And I literally said, I'm quitting today if I don't get help. And he goes, "Oh, well, hold on. Let's get you help." So the implementation of that first ERP system, it was slated to take 6 to 8 months. It took 2 years.
Yeah.
2 years.
That's every ERP implementation is like that, though. The salesperson will tell you 6 to 8 months, and then it always takes 2 years. I got one done. It was a NetSuite implementation. I got it done in a year and a half, and I was telling somebody about it, and they were like, "I don't believe that. You didn't get it done in a year and a half."
We learned from Oracle EBS. We used it for 7 years, and we switched to NetSuite. We got that one done in 6 months. 6 months, because my team was now so used to this Oracle EBS monster of just how difficult it is to actually, first of all, implement it, but second of all, keep it running properly and fix all the issues as we go. NetSuite was much easier than Oracle EBS, so our team still worked 6 months. I remember eating dinner literally Monday through Friday with them till 9 p.m. We were there working with my team to implement NetSuite across the globe. Still difficult. Still a long time. But I think after you do one or two, it does get a little easier because you know what to look for. and you know what the requirements really, how important requirements are in the beginning to really understand the current state and what the future state should look like. And really what implementation really is for ERP is testing, right? 80%, 90% is testing. Yes, there's the buy-in thing that you need and all these other things, but the bulk of it is testing. And I explain this to a lot of people actually, because a lot of my clients are implementing NetSuite for one reason or another recently. I keep telling them the most important part is the beginning, is to understand your current state and what you actually need in the future state. And all you're really doing is it's not something new. You're taking what you're already doing and understanding how to do it in the new system.
Oh, I know. And honestly, while we're talking, I'm thinking that's a whole different episode. Daniel and Glenn break down do's and don'ts of ERP
Exactly.
implementations
Yeah.
because it's always painful, but it's beautiful when you get to the other side. But man, it is a slog.
Oh, for years. No one
Yeah.
really tells you about what is it? Post go live. What do you call it? Support? Right? It's like it doesn't end when you go live. It actually almost begins again
Yep.
when you go
Yep.
live.
All right. So on to the meat of the show, on to what we really came to talk about today. But now we're gonna do another episode. I'm sure of it. We're gonna do ERP
Perfect. Sounds good. I'd love
implementation.
to. Yeah.
But on to the meat of the show for today. I want to talk about you and what you're doing at CuroWork and some of the stuff that you've been through in your finance career. So I guess maybe to start off, you moved from CFO to CEO and co-founder of CuroWork. So tell me what led you to make the move and what you're doing now at CuroWork.
As probably most people that are listening, if you're ambitious and you want to try to get to the CFO, C-suite level, you know, you think that I just need to get there. And I think that's perfectly valid, and I think that's great. My entire life, just how I'm wired is I just need to keep moving up, right? And when I got to the CFO level, I looked around and said, "Wait a second, where do I move next?" And so that bothered me. I just wired that way. And I asked. I was actually at UCLA Anderson in the executive MBA, and I asked a few of the professors and counselors and things like that, and people with a lot of experience, like, hey, how do I get from CFO to CEO? And literally, the answer to me, I kid you not, they said, you can't. I was like, what kind of answer is this? I mean, I'm here getting my MBA to understand like how I can move up and do all these things. And they kind of broke it down and say, hey, if you look at the statistics, CFOs in general do not make good CEOs or do not get to the CEO level because they're CFO for a reason. They have a different personality. They're not salespeople. They're not this. The only ones that really move from CFO to CEO are companies that they work in that are financially, they're a financial type of company and they have expertise in it, so they can actually become a CEO. And that bothered me a lot. I was like, this cannot be I cannot. Number one, and to truth be told, when I became a CFO, after about a month, I literally thought to myself, if I had to do this for the next 25 years, I can't do it. Like, I just can't do it. It's just, I've been doing this for so long. It's similar work. You just have more responsibilities, right? But anyways, long story short, they said you can't. And I said, no. I'm going to make it happen. One of the workshops I was at, some guy said basically, hey, all you guys have been working in corporate for 15 plus years. And you guys are executive MBA students. You guys are, wiser in age. One of the biggest things I find is that you're always stuck in this grind. And the problem is because you're doing the same thing over and over and over again, your creativity starts diminishing. And so you don't know, or you're trained not to really problem solve big parts of what you're doing. Some of that nature. But what really struck me was the creativity side. I literally was thinking, I have not been creative for the past 20 years of my career. I was just doing transactional work, process work, just constantly, just every single day, just doing it every single day, right? But I knew there were huge issues in companies, in my company, the companies I worked at, so much that we can actually do and so much opportunity. And the guy literally goes, hey, since you're in this executive MBA, and we're in the middle of COVID, by the way, he said, why don't you all take some time? It could be a month, 3 months, 6 months, a year, and just think. Just think and be creative. And literally that's what I did. And I found a solution for a problem that I've been having for literally all my career. Never thought there was a solution. Found that it actually works. Tested it, asked 200 plus people, professionals, and now I'm a CEO, building the software and the structure and this methodology to help back offices transform from cost centers to profit centers.
So we're going to dive into what you guys are doing a little more, but tell me, so what's the status of the business now? Where are you in product development and launch? Do you have beta customers? What's going on at CuroWork
Oh
now?
yeah, well, thank you for the question. I think it's another episode if you talk about startups and how it all works. It's non-linear, I suppose. There's so much learning to be had, but currently we are just coming out of a closed beta. We have early access. We have customers. We have paying customers currently, and we have a lot of people on trials. And so we're learning what really moves the needle and helps companies, especially back office people, really deliver value. Not just deliver value, because we actually are delivering a lot of value. It's actually being able to articulate and show the value that we bring, right, to businesses. So we have customers. We have a working product. I use it every day. We dog food it every day. So
That's great. Great. So let's go ahead and dive in now to the problem that you saw as a finance leader and what you're solving for. So, from you and I talking before the show, we talked about how finance and accounting teams are often seen as, cost centers or second class citizens within an organization, and it's hard to show that value. So, I guess from your experience, why does this perception persist, and what are the underlying factors contributing to it? And then how do you see what's sort of the path out of that?
hmm, yeah, that's the crux of it. So the perception of us being a cost center is actually the reality currently, right? We are a cost center. But the question really is, why are we a cost center? And why are we always stuck as a cost center? There's a few things that I've learned across in my experience in my career is that one of the major things that I picked up on was whenever we talk about sales or customer service or like operations and manufacturing, things like that, we always talk about, hey, how can we improve you guys? How can we improve the sales team and their processes and the tools and the methodologies and all these things so that you can be better at your job, right? But for back office, I literally have never heard that in my entire career. If anything, we always hear, how do we reduce you guys? How do we mitigate your teams, right? How do we have less cost of your team? So we're already, the perception in businesses, back office is already a second class citizen. And because of that, we're undervalued, we're underdeveloped, and we are lacking innovation, right? And so there's a lot of things working against us. We're already perceived and deemed a cost center, but the question is, is that really what we are, right? And now that was my question. It's like, why are we called a cost center? Well, number one, because most of our time is spent on cost generating activities such as payroll, right, or month end close reporting, right? Payroll does not make money, right? But what I've also realized is, and my teams and others that I know, there's so many projects that just lands on our plate, right? Not annually, we have projects. We have so many projects that always come. I know of companies that when I ask them, how many projects do you have at any given point? They're like, I don't know, like 60 to 80, right? It's like, well, how long do you think these projects have been in this project hopper? And some people go, oh, there's projects in there that's been in there for 7 years. We talk about it every year, never gets done, right? And so I never put two and two together until I started being more creative and listening to that guy in the workshop. And I realized, wait a second, we have these projects, but what are projects? Where do they come from? They come from these strategic initiatives that come from the top. So it comes from the top down, right? So just a quick little thing, executives, right? Upper management at the beginning of the year, they usually have an annual meeting to plan for the rest of the year. And they say, hey, these are our top 3 strategic initiatives. And what does that actually boil down to? That boils down to a portfolio of projects. And then at the end of the day, it's one project that goes to a team or department, group, individual, and what a person has to actually execute on that project, right? And so projects are strategic. Projects are new. They're challenging. There's a lot of value in projects. And so projects are growth generating, profit generating, revenue generating, right? That's the whole point of why it's called a project. So in back office, if you look at the type of work that we have all this, what we call our day job, and I could break that down into two other ones, but let's just call it day job. And on the right, we have projects here, but we never have time really to get there. And therefore we're always stuck as cost centers. But if we can reallocate some or a lot of our time to project work, then we can actually become a value center or a profit center.
Yeah, that makes sense. And it's the difficulty is trying to measure that and track it and see where the time goes and everything. And I've worked in so whenever I had an organization, I'm a big fan of MBO, management by objective. It's let's put this in place, let's know what we're working on, let's, it's our bonuses, it's how we measure ourselves and how we combat the idea of just being a drag cost center wise on the company, showing that value that we create. And I think that has to come, just like the projects come from the top down, sort of that direction and what the objectives and goals are has to come from the top down. And I think, for a lot of our listeners are first-time managers, and they're moving, from that individual contributor role to now managing teams. And I think thinking about where those managers sit, you've spoken about the real role of a manager being often misunderstood and overlooked. What do you believe is the true role of a manager, and what prevents many organizations from realizing this?
Right. You actually hit something early in your question there that said the visibility or measuring, right? It's hard to measure. So that is actually the answer and the problem. Back offices, historically, since, I don't know, the Industrial Revolution, maybe a little bit after that, we don't measure what we do. I talked to a CFO about what our product does and our solution, and he literally goes, "Hey, Daniel, I just realized something." I said, "What did you realize?" He said, "I'm a CFO. I mainly manage finance and accounting. My teams are the most analytical people in the company. We measure everybody, all the other departments, engineering to sales to product management." And he goes, "You know what? We don't measure ourselves." I'm like, that's the problem. And that's actually the problem that we're solving, because that is the crux of why we're stuck as a cost center. So, and that's why also your question about being what does a manager do, or what are they really supposed to do? Right? They're doing what they're supposed to do right now, except they're not equipped properly with the right data or the tool or methodology of how to actually be effective, more effective in management. The reason why I say that is this. In anything that we do, right? If you plan, if you're trying to get to point B, if you don't know where point A is or where you are, it's literally impossible to get to point B, right? So you have to understand where you are in point A. So there's as many of you guys may know, Peter F. Drucker, who is the father of modern management. If you don't know him, buy his books. It's unbelievable, the things that he says. There is a quote that he is quoted all the time, but he's misquoted all the time. And the misquote is this: if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. So many people, I would even tell you, embarrassingly enough, even in when I was in the consulting firm for 12 years, we used to say this all the time. And I used to say it even thereafter, until literally like 3 years ago when I really learned what the real quote was. So the thing is, people think if you can't measure, you can't manage it. But actually, that's a quote from somebody else. And there's another part to that. He literally goes, no, we do that all the time. We manage things that we never measure, right? We manage a lot of things that we don't measure. It's like, that doesn't make any sense. So that's a whole different quote. What Peter F. Drucker actually said was, if you can't measure, you can't improve, right? If you don't know where your starting point is, you don't know how to get to the next point, or you can't improve yourself. So that's why when we talked about the ERP implementation, the most important part is measuring your current state to understand where you are, so that you can get to the next step, to the future state. So the management it's literally the same thing across the board. We have to measure. How do we know salespeople are doing well? Because we measure their sales. How do we know back office is doing well? We don't measure anything, so we don't know. So hence we're stuck as cost centers. So going back to your question on what is a real manager or what is the true role of a manager? We're already doing the true role, but we're doing it in a less effective way because we don't have the right tools. And really largely, we do not have the measurement or the data to really be an effective manager, if I may say, without trying to, not saying that you guys are not effective managers, but we're trying our best, but we're lacking the tools to be better. And so I'll say this. The reason the role of manager is to manage people and processes, right? So that there's some sort of result at the end, right? And so when we talk about process, that's the critical point. Like, what is the process? Well, process can be broken down into different types of processes and the types of work that you do, whether it's like recurring work, whether it's ad hoc work, whether it's project work. That's actually the three types of work that everybody does. And the process of doing that really matters. Why? Because I'll tell you a quick methodology that we've come up with is this. Literally every person from intern all the way to CEO has three types of work. Recurring work, all the things that you have to do every single week, day, week, quarter, month. Accountants, or we have to do payroll every 2 weeks. Recurring work. Ad hoc work, all the fires, all the issues, the rework, the interruptions that happen every single day, right? And the last one is projects, right? We all know projects. It's a kind of a start and end, sort of a planned outcome. We need an outcome. We have a plan of how to get there, right? And it's usually more than a week or so. The whole entire world is focused on projects. Why? Because we just discussed that it's always how we look at business right now all the time is top down. Right? We look at from the strategic initiatives of the executives, and it comes all the way from portfolio of projects to projects. And so all these projects are so important. And how do we know that? There's like hundreds of project management softwares, right? Hundreds of them. And they all end up being similar and the same at the end of the day, just because of a big to-do list. Why? Because the reason why it becomes a big to-do list and just sits there and no one actually, it's not sustainably used, and I've used almost all of them in my life, is because no one ever gets to these projects, like we said. And the question is, why don't we get to these projects? It's because the project is actually third in line or third most important. Although the business thinks it's the first most important, in reality, it's the third most important type of work. Why do I say that? Recurring work is the number one most important. Why? You can't say, hey, Glenn, so busy this week, can't do payroll. It's like, no. Whatever you do this week, you have to do payroll, right? The second most important, ad hoc work. The fires, they're in your face. You have to fix them today. It's urgent. That's why we call it a fire. It's called firefighting. And so the first two take up the bulk of our time. In our studies and in our experience and working with clients, on average, 90+% of our entire year is spent on recurring and ad hoc work. So very little, if any, is spent on projects, but we all get graded on project work and we never have time to do them. So as managers, what are we supposed to do here? So we're constantly asking, what do we do? Where is this? Where is that? Are you done with your project? Are you done with your objectives? But your team is always saying, I'm so busy, I'm underwater, I need more help. So we can never actually get to these projects. They're always stuck in the first two. Why? At the end, it comes back again to measuring. We don't know exactly what people are doing, and therefore we can't actually manage them properly. So the answer, how do we actually become better managers? We first have to measure what everyone does so that you can make better decisions and be a better manager. There's a whole thing about micromanaging that we might get to, but I'll leave it there. I can talk for another 10 hours on this subject by itself, but it's all about measuring, so that we can make better decisions with the data.
FP&A Today is brought to you by Data Rails, the world's #1 FP&A solution. Data Rails is the artificial intelligence-powered financial planning and analysis platform built for Excel users. That's right, you can stay in Excel. But instead of facing hell for every budget, month-end close, or forecast, you can enjoy a paradise of data consolidation, advanced visualization, reporting, and AI capabilities. Plus, game-changing insights giving you instant answers and your story created in seconds. Find out why more than 1,000 finance teams use Data Rails to uncover their company's real story. Don't replace Excel, embrace Excel. Learn more at datarails.com. You do have a kind of a provocative statement around micromanagement. I do want to come back to that. But while you're talking about all the different types of work we do, from the recurring work to the ad hoc work to the project work, I think about sort of analysis paralysis, and when you have just too many choices in in what you're doing every day, and thinking about trying to prioritize. If it isn't directed by a manager and you're an individual contributor and all these requests are coming in, it's very hard to know what to work on. Basically it's the thing where the person who's loudest in your ear is probably going to get the most attention. But when you have this laundry list of all these different types of work, and you've got the emails and the ad hoc requests coming in, and forget about trying to do deep work or anything. Everything is firefighting. I mean, for finance teams, what are some strategies or best practices that they can do that they ensure that, yes, obviously you've got to get your recurring work done. You've got these ad hoc things that come in. It could be some director or VP from another department, saying, I've got to have this today. And you've got the project work that is a company priority, that is part of your MBO. I mean, how do you how do you balance all that at the contributor level, or maybe better asked, at the management level?
Right. And that is exactly what that problem, or that's one of the major problems we're actually solving for. So the question that you're actually asking is, how do we improve our situation as a manager or an individual contributor? Right. That's the actual question. But then we know improvement can only come if you actually measure what you do. And actually, there's an initial, to make it a little bit more full on what this measurement means. Yes, like other project management tools, they do measure to a certain point, right? That you can put in the task, you can maybe put in hours or things like that. But the thing is, the current tools, their methodology is not measuring in totality your total work. And it might sound scary. It might sound scary. People are like, oh, I'm going to spend all my time now measuring everything I do, right? It's actually very counterintuitive, just like micromanagement is counterintuitive. Measuring work is counterintuitive. We think it's going to take a lot of time. We think that that my manager is now going to micromanage me more, but actually it's the opposite effect. When you actually start measuring your work, what actually happens? Well, let's talk about what happens when you don't measure your work. When you don't measure your work, you're just constantly, like you said, bombarded with all this ad hoc interruptions, calls, emails, plus trying to do your work, plus management telling you to do these projects. Everything's just everywhere, right? It's very difficult to prioritize. That's why we always say, well, I'm busy, I'm busy, I'm busy, because we don't measure what we're actually busy with, right? And so, since we don't know what we're busy with, how in the world is management going to tell you what to do or manage you and direct you what to do? Because they themselves are now 1 degree removed from even yourself. That is, you're the person that received all this work. Now you're asking a manager that doesn't know even, they know even less about what you do, to manage you, to direct you in the right direction. Like, that doesn't even make any sense, right? They have less information than you, and you're asking them to manage. What are we talking about here, right? So the main thing about measuring, it provides visibility. So when you start measuring work in totality, what you have actually created is a single source of truth of your work. Therefore, you and the manager are on the same page, and you're talking about the same things. You're aligned. You have better communication, less misinformation. Actually, it's actually exact information. So now you can say, hey, we agree that I'm going to do this week, these 18 tasks. Well, the CEO just sent me this project. I think it's going to take me like 2 days to finish this. He says it's urgent. Well, what can I do here? So now the manager can actually manage. You can say, hey, actually, what you have to do this week is, you're in month end close, man. You have to do, we don't want to be late. Let me talk to the CEO. So now what happens is, when there's visibility, true visibility, managers they're not micromanaging anymore. They're actually helpful. They go, instead of saying, where is this, where is that, where is this? They say, how can I help you in this? And users, or the individual contributors, they actually start owning their work. And they go to the manager and say, hey, I need help in these 2 things. This has happened. right? So it becomes the workplace that we all desire, right? Where the individual contributor has autonomy, has ownership, has empowerment. And at the same time, managers can actually do what they're supposed to do.
As I think about that as a manager and as a data guy, I would love to have data on what my team is doing all day, every day, and, where they're, to help me figure out where inefficiencies are, where they're getting distraction. But two things that you've talked about are things that just get people to roll their eyes. So I've done a lot of work in service companies that do like time and materials billing. People understand if this is billable to a client, track my time, no problem. If as soon as you ask them to track their admin time and it's outside of something that's billable to a client, they just, oh my goodness, I could never do that. Why are you micromanaging me? Why do I have to fill out a timesheet for this? In the administrative work I'm doing, I feel like I'm being micromanaged. That feels terrible, and it can be a demotivator. And you think about someone, if you call someone a micromanager, that feels like the worst insult you can give someone who's a manager is, oh, she's trying to watch everything that I do, and it's she doesn't know how to manage because she's so involved in everything I do. So kind of walk me through both those two things. One, the problem that people have with logging their time, where my experience has been it makes them feel like they lack agency and that they're just another cog in the wheel, and that their contributions aren't valued if you have to watch what they're doing every minute. So that's two big things to overcome. So maybe I don't know if they can be addressed together or if they have to be addressed separately, but sort of the notion of logging everything you do, mapping out, planning everything you do, and then the idea of what a manager does and their visibility into it.
So that question presupposes there's underlying assumptions to those questions, right? And the underlying assumptions are you're going to be, if I show you everything I do, you're going to be more micromanagey, right? And the negative impulse that we have when someone says, hey, measure or track everything you do, tell me what you do. We have this negative, like, we don't want that, right? You're impeding on my privacy and things like that. But there's a couple things. Number one is, at a very high level, why are we working? Right? We're working for a company so that we can be successful. And success, how do we know we're successful? Because we measure from one thing to another, from getting from this place to a better place, or from $5 million to $10 million. We're measuring. So actually, everything in business we measure. To be successful, we have to measure. And again, I said, all other functions in the company, sales, operations like manufacturing to customer service to engineering, they measure. The problem is we're literally I call the back office the last frontier. We are the only ones not measuring ourselves, and therefore we always get, lack of a better term, we get the crap. We get a lot of crap given to us every single day, right? Because we don't measure it. Imagine if we can measure all the crap that we get and go, hey, look, this is all crap work. Do you still want me to do this? And they're going to say, no, why are you doing that? Right? So I'll give you an example. We did this with a client. We looked at an accounting manager's job description. She was 140% utilized just on her recurring work. Additionally, she had at least 40% of ad hoc work that she was getting. So we were looking at her, a couple of things. We're looking at her current recurring work. We're like, what are you doing here? We can now see it, so we can ask questions. Like, what is that? What is this? And she was doing a ton of reporting. And we said, I didn't even know. The manager was like, I didn't even know that you're doing this reporting. Who is this for? What is this for? And then they're like, oh, this is for ops. I do this every week. And they're like, 5 hours a week? Like, you make this 5 hours every single week, 5 hours? It's like, yeah, I've been doing this for like 3 years. We're like, 3 years? Like, whoa, that's a long time. Do they still use it? Actually, they're doing it for 5 years. They're like, they're 5 years? 5 years? Like, are you sure that they still use it? And she goes, I don't know. It's like, what do you mean you don't? Well, who do you send it to? So we talk to the person we sent to and say, hey, do you use that report every Friday that you get from this person? And he goes, what report? Like, the report on Friday, please check your email. And they go, oh, that email? I haven't even checked that email. I haven't opened it in 3 years. 3 years. Another similar story was we looked at someone's ad hoc work and we found that all these reports for sales were needed, and it stemmed mostly from this one person. Now that we have visibility, we went to this person. It was literally like 60 plus hours a month for accounting. This one person was getting 60 plus hours for reporting, all these reportings that he needs every single month. And we went to him and he said, "What's going on here? Do you need all these reports?" He goes, "Whoa, am I in trouble?" It's like, no. We just want to know if these are important. And he goes, "I've been here for years. No one said anything to me." Like, understood. We're just figuring, like, can you tell us, like, answer the question, please? Like, is this important? And he finally looks at this report and goes, "Oh, yeah, those sales reports, most people don't even use it. I just need these three if you really ask the question." You're like, seriously? We went from like 60 hours to 5. Right? It's just like, just because we lack visibility. So the question is, it's going to be a waste of time. I put all this time to measure. Well, actually, you're wasting so much more time by not measuring. You have no idea. And the kind of a hilarious thing is, we actually do measure our work partially. I ask people, "Hey, how do you manage your ad hoc work? All the things that you get." People go, "Oh, I put it in my Asana or Monday, or I put it into my calendar." And some guy goes, "If you could see my 3 monitors in front of me, I have 75 post-it notes." So I'm like, so you are measuring, you are managing it to a certain extent. You are writing it down. You're putting time to it. All we're saying is do it in a universal way that may actually take about the same time, if less, as you get used to it. And so measuring is the most critical component of all this. Coming to micromanagement now, I think we kind of talked about it a little bit, but what is micromanagement? Why do people have this feeling about micromanagement? Is because they're trying to keep you accountable. By asking you questions. Where is this? Remember we talked Wednesday, you said you're going to be done on Friday. It's Monday. I didn't see the report. You're like, "Oh, I can't do it for whatever reason. Where is that? Where is this?" They're constantly asking questions, and that's called micromanagement. The question is, why are they asking questions? Why is there micromanagement? At the very underlying, at the very bottom, at the very beginning basis of it is lack of trust. The question is, why is there lack of trust? Lack of visibility. They're asking you because they can't see or they don't know that you actually did what you said you're going to do. So now if you have visibility and say, "This is what I'm doing this week. These are the 18 things I am supposed to do. I did 16 at the end of the week. I have 2 that I didn't do, and I could explain those because I got 4 other ad hoc work." Imagine if you could do that. There are no more questions of why. It turns into, how can I help you do this? Why are you getting 4 ad hoc work? I see this happening every single week and it's coming from this department. Let me go talk to that manager and see what's going on. Let me see if we can like mitigate that or fix it for good, that you don't have to keep doing this every single week. And so that's when you actually are able to manage properly. And at the same time, you're able to work properly as an individual contributor because you know exactly what's expected of you and you can explain the variance. So it's really, I'm talking to FP&A people, right? We always talk about forecasting and what is the basis? Budgeted or planned versus actual and variance. And we want to manage the variance. Because everything we want to plan, we don't care. That's all good. It's the variance that we're concerned about, especially the negative variance. So we should be looking at tasks and our work in the same way. What do we plan our tasks for the week? What do we actually get accomplished? And what is the variance? So now instead of talking about all the things, you just talk about the variance, the 2, 3, 5 things instead of the 40 things that you're supposed to have done.
If I'm managing a finance team, what are the metrics? What are the measurables? Kind of the only thing that comes to mind for me, the first thing is obviously, how long does it take us to close? And, did we miss payroll? What mistakes did we make? So to effectively manage the team, if you could have this omniscient view, superpower in, what are the KPIs, the things that we would want to measure on our own performance?
Good question. I would say that it's more general than that. My assumption here is that people in the back office, finance, accounting people, we actually know how to do our job. That's my number one assumption. We know what we're supposed to do. We know how to do it, right? The problem is all this other stuff that happens that derails us. So the question really becomes, and I don't think we covered this. We kind of did. Oh, actually we did. Is that the back office, we're the last frontier, right? Like I said, the last frontier, how? We are the only function in the business that doesn't have a measure of success. All other functions do. Sales, we say, hey, for this company, You have to every single salesperson has to call 500 leads. You go through the sales cycle. The conversion rate is 2%, and you'll make $1 million. So everybody has to do that. But in back office, you can't say, "Hey, all FP&A people, you all have to do this." Like that doesn't even make any sense. Why? There's a Gartner study that said that in Fortune 500 companies, every single month, back offices do 600 to 800 tasks and services for the company. 600 to 800 on average, right? So how are you going to say, "Oh, everybody do 600? That doesn't make any sense. So the measure of success, what I found, the secret sauce, if I may say, I'm just going to tell you guys, the secret sauce of how to measure performance is actually an individual measure of success. And it's based first off your job description, your recurring work. It comes back to that same thing, recurring ad hoc projects. So because recurring work is actually measurable, because that's what you get paid for. You have to do that. You know when you're supposed to do it by. You know about how long it takes. You understand that. You have that utilization, right? So that's the basis. How much time am I spending just on my recurring work? You can actually calculate that pretty simply. And it's recurring, so you don't have to keep inputting it, right? You just do it one time. And the flip side of recurring work is free capacity. Free capacity, you're supposed to be doing what? Projects. Why? Because it moves companies forward, it grows companies. What's the problem? The second work in the middle, ad hoc work that derails everything. So how do we measure success? What are the metrics of success? Well, you can measure it like what's month and close end date, but actually, in my opinion, where you start is the individual. And that's how professional growth happens as well as, and at the same time, it helps grow the company and it helps grow the company. And the reason why I say is this. There isn't, I believe in the back office, there isn't a measure of success that is universal for FP&A people or accounting people, because you have two accountants in one company, they can be doing drastically different things. So really what back office does is we're very fluid to a certain degree. So everybody has a set recurring work. Now that's one of your metrics. What is that for you, for that individual? What is the amount of time this person should be putting in for ad hoc work? What is a reasonable amount of time that we should set? Is it 2 hours a day, 4 hours a day? Is it 1 hour a day? Is it zero? Depends on the company. And then how much time should we expect them to work on projects that helps the company move forward, right? So I think in a high level sense, those are the metrics, and it's actually an individual. The methodology is standardized. Everybody should be measured this way at the very basic level. But in terms of what the metric is, it's an individual metric per where your company is, per the maturity of the person and the role, right?
Yeah. And I think, without that measurement and visibility, you do things as a manager, like you have your team spend more time putting together status reports for the week and updating their projects and just, the sort of verbal communication around it. Whereas if you're actually logging the hours and tracking it and everything, you have an idea of, well, remember we had budgeted 5 hours a week for you to work on this project. And now I see concretely you only worked on it 2 hours this week. Where did that extra time go? And I think, you could really get bogged down in sort of the sausage making of our job, of the month end close, the quarter close, the filings, everything that you go through, running payroll, bank recs, whatever is happening in the department. It's hard to provide value when you're just going through the motions of of doing the work, of being sure that everybody's paid on time, that being sure that we don't miss the close time and inventory counts, whatever we're doing in our group. It doesn't feel strategic, but there is the role of finance has shifted over the years, and certainly you have to have the people who are doing the close and providing all that information, but then it's what you can take and do with it. And I'm wondering, do you see, are there efficiencies to be gained? Because when you talk about the management of it, it's easy to lose sight of the end product that we're actually providing. But if you are effectively managing this, do you see the potential for teams to gain efficiency and to be able to, because they're tracking at this kind of level, transition to where they actually do have more time and they can carve out time for strategic work and sort of that deep work and thinking at a higher level than just transactional?
100%. That's literally the goal. So the perfect business actually is, in terms of people, is to to give people perfect autonomy, that they are able to do their own work themselves, make the best decision themselves, prioritize themselves, right? That's the Holy Grail. Now, how in the world do we get there? I repeat myself so many times, but it's actually measurement and visibility, and this is what I say. So we talked about the initial layer, the benefits of measurement and visibility. It actually does. It takes a lot less time to actually measure than to actually how we're currently working. There's statistics you can look up on Google online that says the average worker's productivity in a day is anywhere in between 3 to 4 hours. So in an 8-hour day, you're really only productive 3 to 4 hours. And the question is why? And we say switching costs. We say, interruptions and all these things that we said. But it's because we don't really know, we're not clear on our expectations. We don't know what we're really supposed to do that day. So we spend a lot of time thinking and analysis paralysis. How that works is this. Now imagine you have measured your recurring work. Let's say your recurring work. Let's say you do payroll every 2 weeks. It takes 3 hours. Month end close, I have 8 activities or tasks on there. That takes me 14 hours a month. All these things, right? I have to do this report for operations. So now you can add, now the first question I ask is this. Once everybody has that, I say, hey, in your recurring work, what is improvable? What is eliminable, or what can we eliminate? If you can do anything, if you had everything at your disposal, right? If you can improve, which ones could you improve? You can delegate, eliminate, right? And you'd be amazed. People go, oh, this thing that's 15 hours a month, that's actually 3 hours. And you go, why is it 15? Because I probably spend 10 to 12 hours a month fixing, re-auditing, reworking things that people send to me. It's not even my fault, but I have to fix it and tell them, do it again, do it again, do it again. So, Daniel, if I had it my way, if they just did it right the first time, my job would take 3 hours. Cool. Well, let's write down as a project. Not your project because you're not managing them, but it's a project for somebody else to do because this is a problem that we have. Now we can find ROI. Simple things. How much time are you currently taking? How much time can you save? About what is the dollar amount that you are and the improvement, and you extrapolate that out to a year or whatever period you want. And then now you can actually do a weighted average of ROI. And then now you can literally go, hey, out of my 32 recurring tasks, actually 14 of them are improvable. And it's in this order of priority. So now you have these micro tasks that you can do or other people have to do. And now the business knows, hey, we can actually become better and save time. So now that I've saved from going from 15 hours to 3 hours, what do I do with 12 hours? Projects, right? All the things. And I think back office, especially even as an accountant, as a finance person, even in the CFO role, it's not really until I got to the CFO role, I would say, that I truly understood, or really, I was able to kind of think about what is my role here? And I realized one thing. One of the major things I realized was this. The question is, what is a business here for? What is the primary purpose of a business? You can say a lot of different things, but I'll say, to make it very easy and simple, is to grow. A goal of a business is to grow. If you don't grow, then what is it? You're dying, right? If your revenue is stagnant at 50 million and every year it's just 50 million, well, you saw inflation the past couple of years, you're dying. Then you have less resources to hire, less resources or money to pay bonuses and do all the great things that you want for people. So actually, the purpose of business is to grow. So we all in a company should understand this and have a mindset of growth. So instead of because payroll does not grow companies. So the question is, how can we now be creative and eliminate or make payroll time as short as possible, right? Without diminishing quality, just put more time into growth. And you might think, well, I don't care because I don't get anything of that. That's business. That's the business side of things. It's like, actually, no. It's actually, you get so much benefit when you do projects. Why? It helps professional development. What is professional development? We want to grow as a person. How do we grow as a person? We have to be challenged. We have to do something new. We have to collaborate and learn how to work with people. We have to learn how to communicate better. And what are all of those? How is that? That is all encapsulated in a project. That's exactly what a project is. It's new. right? It's challenging. You have to talk to people, right? You have to struggle with it. And so your professional development grows. And it's actually perfect that you brought the ERP thing up front just by chance. Because I think, and I'm sure you also attest to it, you probably grew so much professionally just by doing an ERP implementation. So hard. So not only does it help projects help business grow, it helps you grow. And if you actually now have the visibility, it will tell you, right? This is what this person has done. And you will now get rewarded and recognized by merit and not what your manager remembers what the last 2 months you did, but forgot the great thing you did in January and February, right? You will have that visibility.
What I hear in that, and I think about, you can grow a business really in two. Obviously, the first thought is top line, but then I think from a continuous improvement standpoint, if you can't grow the top line, if you can get more efficient and grow the bottom line by being more efficient in what you do, then that has its merit as well. And I think about what if you're going to do an ERP implementation, before you pick the software, you have to figure out what your process is. What's our conversion, from here they are in the sales pipeline, and this is when we win and we bring them in. What happens with client onboarding and everything that we go through? What kind of project management tools are we using? What CRM are we doing to track the customer while they're with us? What happens when they churn out? But you have to figure out that whole process and everything, all the touch points with the customer, and how you interact with them. And then likewise, what happens in the back office to sort of support all that. But you have to document the processes so that you can know where your roadblocks are and where you may have gatekeepers and where the process is broken. So if you don't have the data and you don't know that it takes 15 hours a month to run this report, if you've got an employee that has X number of hours in a month and you're seeing that they're spending the bulk of their time doing this thing that's maybe a low value add, that tells me we need to automate. There's so much once you have that data, you can make so many decisions around it.
It opens up everything. Literally having the data, the back office can now literally be on par with the front office. This is why I say we're going to move from second class citizens to first class citizens, or from cost centers to profit centers, because examples are actually the most important, right? So how did we actually do something like this, or how does back office actually become a profit center? We may not actually sell to the client directly, but we're 1 degree removed, but we're just as important. So as an example, what we have done with the client is this. We found that we did it for salespeople as well. So it's not just actually back office. We actually did the same exercise with salespeople. And we found that this sales team, every single person on average had 9 hours of administrative work a week. 9 hours. First of all, no one knew that until we did the assessment. Secondly, we said, you are not selling for a whole entire day? And he goes, they all go, no. We sell every day, but I have to do this 9 hours during nights and weekends. And it's killing me. I hate it. It like stresses me out so much, right? So imagine the inefficiency, just the mental, drainage, how that affects sales, number one, right? So we asked them, out of all this, I think they had like an average of like 6 tasks. And we said, which one of the tasks can we help you with? What's the thing that you hate the most? And we thought they're going to say Salesforce. We hate entering into Salesforce because most people don't like it. But they actually said, no, that's actually second. The first one is what the finance team gives us, the Excel sheet that we have to put in what's in Salesforce into this thing with the probabilities. They go, that takes me 4.5 hours on average a week. And that actually does, that's so important because that's for cash flow and all these things, right? And we said, well, how can we help you with that? This is just your knowledge. He goes, no. He goes, entering it in is the hardest part. I just need an accountant or somebody that can do Excel. You just need 30 minutes of my time. The other 4 hours can be done by the accountant or somebody. We're like, so you're telling me that if we hire a business analyst for $80,000, that we can literally take 4 hours of work away from each of you a week? And they're like, yes. When they literally, the business goes, hire that person now. And I think they said they made upwards to like, they believe anywhere from 1.2 million to 4 million, depending on how you actually do the calculation, extra revenue just by hiring that $80,000 person. But they had no visibility otherwise, right? So that's how, and the business analyst did it. The back office actually helped understand this. Another one was, there was a scheduling. There's consultants everywhere and scheduling, and this company was doing scheduling by Excel. In business for decades, still doing by Excel, hundreds of people. They were missing on average 10 to 15 engagements a month because they had to actually go to the site. And they would yell and scream. The client would call, "Why isn't your consultant here?" Like, what? What happened? It would take you hours, and like, "Oh, we'll send someone right away." By the time it's too late, we have this lost revenue, this lost time, etc. And I found this, and there's hundreds of engagements a month, right? And so I found that there was leakage here, and I asked the team, I was like, "Hey, did you guys know that this is happening?" And they're like, "Oh yeah, this is happening for 10 years." Like 10 years? I did a quick back of the napkin math on how much it would be if 10 to 15 a month times the average engagement times whatever. It was millions. And I said, this is happening just because of a scheduling issue, because it's on Excel. And and you guys are not even good at Excel. Your Excel is it was so bad. It was not. We're not even using the proper formulas. And so I talked to the back office team. And I said, "Hey, I need 2 accountants. I believe about 60 hours. I need you to fix this spreadsheet." They did it in a month and a half. That went from about 10 to 15 missed engagements to literally like 1 or 2 in about a month and a half. And it went to 0 in 3 months. So the back office made them millions of dollars just by fixing this spreadsheet. This one problem that everybody knew was there, but they did not even quantify the effect of it. And the person that can actually fix it was back office people, right? And that's millions of dollars every single year.
Yeah, and you're talking about this from a human resources standpoint, but right now with the onslaught of AI, it goes beyond that. And I think about automation, integration, data, and implementation of AI solutions here. Really, not to get into the whole debate on how many of us will be replaced by AI, but augmenting what we do and getting these efficiencies and removing us from these archaic systems like scheduling and Excel and stuff like that, but moving out of that into more efficient ways to work. I don't think anybody goes and get a master's degree in accounting or a master's degree in finance with the idea that they're going to be a data entry person and doing all this kind of stuff. So
Exactly.
the more of that we can automate, but by having visibility into how much time we're spending on things, that tells us where to focus our automation. And I think about, we have to have the data as the foundation. Once we have the data and we can see where we're spending our time, we'll know where to point the laser to focus on our automation projects and to get the gains. And I think looking at that and seeing kind of where we are with technology right now, and with more and more data being collected, everywhere, but in particular on like tracking what we're doing on a daily basis, and the data and that we're creating, and the value that we're adding. I mean, how do you see this type of data and this type of insight into our work efforts merging with AI? And what do you kind of see, where do you see corporate finance evolving in the next 5 or 10 years with this convergence of technologies that are coming right now?
Yeah, I love the question. I'm very opinionated, and that doesn't mean I'm right. But I do have an opinion on a couple of these things. Number one, you said something actually amazing. Like you totally understand it. Is that once you measure and you have visibility, it will actually tell you what you can automate or even eliminate, right? Or even delegate to maybe a third party somewhere. So it actually gives you clarity into what you need to do to make it more efficient. But with AI now, if you put AI on top of that, well, imagine you now have the totality of what each individual is supposed to do, 95+% of what they do. AI is really good when you have good data, right? So now you have data. AI can, I would say, in 3 to 5 years, we would be able to say, hey, we want to grow this company by 10% in this region. What do we need to do? And so now AI the thing because we know what people do and what the outputs were. We know the ROI of the projects that we've done, how we actually grew. So it would say, hey, the perfect workforce to do this is this. These people need to do this. That person needs to do that. So it'll give you a benchmark of sorts, a guideline of what you need to do. But it's at the end of the day, people are indispensable. AI will not replace the people side because people are actually, in my opinion, smarter. Not in terms of compute power, but we have intuition. We have relationships, right? A lot of business is done by relationships, right? Most of it, actually. And so AI cannot replace those things. What AI can replace are the repetitive things. But again, I have an opinion on that. People say 30%, 40% of back office is going to be replaced by AI. My question is, well, which part? AP automation has been around for more than a decade. I know more companies not using AP automation than companies using it, right? And they have AI and everything like that now. The reason is this. It's actually a very simple example. If I have a Home Depot receipt and I bought things for project A, project B, and my workshop at work, and it's on one receipt, how in the world do I AI that? You can't. You still need a person to go, hey, these 5 things at $687 is project A, $282 is project B, and the rest is internal. Like you cannot, someone has to still tell you, AI cannot read your mind. It doesn't know what your intent is in buying those things. It can maybe guess here and there, because if you buy similar things for similar projects, it can kind of say, okay, but if you buy a bucket, it can be, how are you supposed to know that? You don't. So people are, even in the simplest thing, a receipt, and most people think AP is probably the easiest place because we have it's just volume and transactional, but it's actually even the easiest place we think is really hard. So can we replace it by AI? I think that the only way that can happen is if we standardize receipts. If we standardize the process of buying something, which is probably almost impossible. I mean, I just don't know a world that you can do that in because people will do whatever we want. And so if you cannot standardize, you actually cannot automate. Standardization is but AI is all about what is it? I forgot the exact term, but it's finding all this data from all these places and making a best guess. Well, that's okay if you're okay with error. Like if you're okay with the margin of error, but if the margin of error is 2%, right, and this thing is it gets 2% wrong, well, how much? What's the dollar value of that? It's probably a lot, depending on the company.
So, well, I mean, I know we could go on this all day, and I'm really, I need to get on the books, our ERP episode, where we talk about that next. But
Yes.
I do. Before we go, I do. We just dove straight into some really nerdy finance and back office stuff. But before we let you off the hook, we do like to know a little bit more about you personally. So maybe share with our listeners something that that not many people know about you. Maybe something they couldn't figure out, just by Googling you real quick.
Yeah. That's an interesting one. I was 4th grade. Someone vacuumed over our TV line. I came home from school, didn't know that. I tried to turn on the TV, and I was like, "Oh, the line's disconnected." I went up there and I put it together, and my whole body, I just remember the feeling of the electrocution. Just like I don't know what happened. 2 years later, 6th grade, I'm just daydreaming in class, Miss Williams' class, and I'm like, oh my, I was electrocuted 2 years ago. I did not remember for 2 years.
Wow.
And maybe that's why I'm weird. I don't know. But that's
Just rewired brain synapses, I guess. When they
exactly. Maybe that's why I think differently or whatever it may be. But yeah, that was it was hilarious. I started laughing in class. I was like, I cannot believe I just remember this 2 years later. But yeah, don't unplug the thing before you guys put the put the wire back in. It was not
good
thinking.
advice. Yeah. All right, and here's one. We did talk a little bit about Excel, and I think your answer is not going to be scheduling. But what is your favorite Excel function and why?
That's an interesting one. I used to use a lot of functions when I was in the CFO or accounting finance role, but these days, CEO role, I don't play too much in it. I just do it for forecasting purposes. And I would say currently I use the sum if function a lot. It's a very simple function. My general philosophy is in anything you do with Excel, if you design it and structure Excel properly, your formula should be as simple as possible, because if it's not, it's very hard to understand and backtrack and audit what the heck is happening. So I would say like sum if, X lookup, like literally the easiest ones as much as possible. If you can do it, you should use the easiest one. If you can't, you should rethink probably your data set and how you actually structured it. Some data sets are very hard. And I had functions that were like nested like 10 deep, right? So that happens. But I would say currently sum if is my favorite. I've been using it a lot recently. So simple.
I love your response because it's sort of the difference between finance people and accounting people. It's like, if I've got to make this, for audit and be able to explain what I'm doing here, we need to simplify it as much as possible. Where I think sometimes in finance, we just geek out on how complex our formulas can be.
Yeah.
And like, look at this. This is 13 nested ifs, and
Yeah.
I'm
like 3
referencing
different
this
sheets and 2 different files, and you're like, what is this? What is this from? How do I interpret this?
How can our listeners connect with you and learn more about CuroWork and what you're doing?
Yeah, our website, CuroWork.com, CuroWork.com, or you can feel free to LinkedIn me. I actually try to at least almost all my messages. So Daniel Paik, Paik. And if you look up CuroWork, you'll find me there.
All right, Daniel, thank you very much. Really enjoyed this episode and appreciate you coming on.
Oh, really fun. We should do it again. Thanks, Glenn.